Hello everybody, my name is Robius and welcome to a new episode of Assassin's Creed The Real History. In this series I compare events in a selected character's life within one of the Assassin's Creed games to the actual history the individual lived through. As always, beware of major story spoilers. For today's episode, we'll be exploring the history of the pirate-maiden, Anne Bonny. As is customary, I'll begin this episode by sharing with you her pre-game history, which will inform us on her background prior to AC4, then her in-game history, which we will see depicted in the game, and lastly we will analyze the differences between what happens in the game to the real historical events of her life. Starting with the pre-game history, Anne Bonny, whose maiden name was Anne Cormac, was born in Kinsale, County Cork, Ireland, on March 8, 1702. Her mother, Mary Brennan, was a servant, and her father, William Cormac, was a lawyer and her mother's employer. Once again, not much information is available concerning Anne's youth, but it is known that she and her family immigrated to the New World when she was very young. Soon after moving to North America, Anne's mother passed away, and as her father's career as a lawyer was deteriorating, he eventually joined a successful merchant business and became rich as a result. As Anne grew up, she was known to be attractive. However, she had a violent streak. According to legend, she once stabbed a servant with a table knife following a disagreement when she was 13 years old. This eventually led to her father disowning her, which may have also been caused by her choice to marry a poor sailor turned small-time pirate named James Bonny, and through this union, she gained her familiar last name. Her husband wanted to inherit his father-in-law's fortune, but since Anne was disowned, this was not to be. She and her husband then moved to Nassau on New Providence Island in 1718 when Anne was just 16 years old. It is near this period in time where we first met Anne in AC4. As her husband continued his career, eventually becoming an informant for Governor Rogers by ratting out his fellow pirates, Anne became unimpressed with him. This eventually led her to meeting other men while she was still married. Around 1718 or 1719, she met the pirate Jack Rackham, who had just recently become the captain of his own ship by stealing it from Charles Vane. Anne became his mistress, and following her husband's attempted punishment of her, the two left Nassau and eloped. Rackham made Anne a member of his crew, but soon after, she was pregnant and had their first child in Cuba. It is claimed that they named him Cunningham, however, there isn't any solid record of what happened to him following his birth. All that is known is that Anne soon returned to piracy with Rackham, whom she married while out at sea. This entire sequence is similarly represented in Assassin's Creed 4, however the game depicts that their relationship began while Rackham was still a member of Vane's crew and prior to the arrival of Rogers in Nassau, and there's not really any mention of them having a child at this point. As they continued their piracy, Rackham and Bonny attacked multiple vessels and would sometimes recruit some of their captured sailors. They were eventually joined by Mary Reed, a female pirate who was originally disguising herself as a man. When Anne began showing interest in her, Reed revealed her secret to Bonny and began to train her further in the ways of combat. Rackham soon grew jealous, thinking another man was taking Anne from him. When he finally confronted Reed, she told him the truth, and Rackham soon became famous for being the first pirate to openly have two women serving on his crew, which was originally considered to be bad luck. This sequence was well represented in the game as Edward spied on the trio while in the observatory. Becoming an effective fighter, Anne participated in many battles when Rackham's crew was raiding a large assortment of vessels. She, along with Rackham and Reed, were eventually placed on a wanted list posted by Governor Woodes Rogers. Bonny and Reed specifically had developed quite a reputation for their violence and vulgarity.
Dear lady, what do they call you?
Anne when they're sober, a jilt when they're sauced, but never lady.
Well.
As time passed, some privateers began to take the contracts for Rackham's ship. In late 1720, they were tracked down as Rackham's vessel was docked and his men were celebrating and getting drunk. The privateer captain Jonathan Barnett, under contract by the governor of Jamaica, found and attacked their vessel. Most of the men did not fight, but history states that Mary Reed and Anne Bonny stood and fought fiercely against their attackers. Unfortunately, they were outmatched, and all the pirates were captured and arrested. Rackham and some of the other male pirates were quickly found guilty and hung for their crimes outside of Port Royal on November 18, 1720. However, during the trial of Anne Bonny and Mary Reed, despite the fact that many of their victims testified against them, they claimed and later proved that they were pregnant, and therefore received a delayed sentence until their children would be born. This entire trial sequence was similarly showcased in Assassin's Creed 4 and made for quite a spectacle.
You, Mary Reed and Anne Bonny, are to go from hence to the place from whence you came, and from thence to the place of execution, where you shall be severally hanged by the neck, till you are severally dead, dead, dead!
Oh, Ross!
May God in his infinite mercy be merciful to each of your souls!
We're pregnant! Do you all hear that?
What the devil did she say?
They plead their bellies, my lord.
Aye, you can't hang a woman quick with child, can ye?
Quiet! Quiet! If what you claim is true, then your executions will be stayed, but only until your terms are up.
Then I'll be up the duck the next time you come knocking.
Mary died in prison approximately 5 months after her trial of what was assumed to be a fever, which was brought on following childbirth. And at this point, we lose track of Anne Bonny historically. There are no official records following her imprisonment, except for the fact that it seems she was not executed. Different researchers have proposed a few theories of what might have happened, but please keep in mind that what follows from this point on are just possibilities. One theory states that her father paid to have her freed from prison, and that she was brought back to live with him in Charlestown, South Carolina, where she gave birth to her and Rackham's second child. It then states that she married a local worker named Joseph Burleigh, and that together they had many children. This theory suggests that Anne may have died of natural causes at 80 years old, while she was considered a respectable woman. A separate theory, however, suggests her father used his merchant connections to smuggle her out of prison, and that she returned to live in Nassau. Both of these theories differ from what was represented in AC4, when Edward, with the help of Atabai, freed Anne from prison and returned her to Tulum. The game later depicted her becoming his new quartermaster. It seems we will never know exactly how Anne Bonny's life ended, but it's interesting to consider these possible theories. In summary, there are a few differences between Anne Bonny's actual life and her representation in AC4, although this is partially due to a lack of factual information concerning certain aspects of her life. Firstly, Assassin's Creed depicted her relationship with Rackham starting prior to his acquisition of Vane's ship and the arrival of Woodes Rogers, which was not the case. Secondly, and this is a purely subjective difference based on the canon story represented in the game, it was never mentioned that Anne had been previously married, although it is technically implied due to her last name, nor is it mentioned that she and Rackham had a first child prior to her imprisonment. Lastly, Assassin's Creed depicted her as being freed from the prison through the joint efforts of Edward Kenway and Atabai. Thereafter, Anne implies that she had known the other pirates, such as Blackbeard, prior to their deaths, which cannot be confirmed. In addition, she returned to piracy as Edward Kenway's new quartermaster, and it is implied that she lost her second child following her escape. Overall, the majority of these differences are based in the fact that segments of her real history remain a mystery to historians to this day. And with that final fact, we have finished another episode of Assassin's Creed: The Real History. I hope you have all enjoyed the video, and if you did, I highly recommend you try out one of the Assassin's Creed games. Thank you all for watching. Please leave any suggestions for future characters you'd like me to cover in the comment section below. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in a future historical episode.
Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me.